this last summer.
Okay, so this is really kind of amusing in a way, and it's not a funny story, but
No, it certainly isn't.
because one of the things that I've been doing for the last few weeks is talking to people about Curtis Rogers incidents, and well, I heard another one this week. At this point in time, I've listened to 5 taser incidents related to the same officer, and I've actually talked to 3 of those people, and one of the stories I heard, I haven't been able to track it back, contact information to who the story was actually about. I haven't talked to them, but I've talked to 3 other people, and then of course I had my own incident with him. But to me it was somewhat amusing because as long as this has been going on, I just heard this from you in the last week. It said, this is my mother, Lola Ripple, and she actually observed a taser incident sometime within the last couple months. We believe it was earlier in the year 2015. And the backstory, as I got it, came from your neighbor. He was actually the defendant's great aunt. This would be Timmy's, and I'm not going to bring a lot of names into this because it's not pertinent to your story and I don't want to embarrass anybody over it, but we thought it was her nephew. It was actually his son. So the backstory is pretty funny. Timmy, or the nephew, the great aunt related the story because she saw the whole thing too. The guy that was involved in the incident, who would be considered the defendant if whatever charges was brought against him, he has had some issues here with the law. He has no history of violence that we can turn up, but because he's been in jail and he's had a lot of trouble with the cops here, he was apparently coming up 3rd Street. Was it late at night?
No, it was in the
daytime. It was in the daytime. And he had an open container of, I assume, beer. So when the cops saw him, there was a chase ensued because whether you think it's justified or not, as this defendant states it, he says that the cops here have hounded him and harassed him and invented stuff before about him. And he felt like if they got anything on him at all that he would go back to jail. So it's not really amusing, but he ran from them because he was simply trying to avoid getting arrested for an open container. And instead of going into his aunt's apartment, he ran around the back of the apartment, which is adjacent to yours. And at some point during this incident, as she related it, they actually ran him down from behind and shot him with a taser. But you apparently came out just as this was happening through your back door, and you saw some of it, and you yelled something at him.
He was chasing this kid, and I just instinctively yelled, "What are you doing?" And at that time, his aunt came out, and so I came back in the house, came back in my apartment.
She indicated to me that you were concerned about her, and she said it's okay. But the neighbor told you it would be all right. That she was there to watch what was going on after that and observed. So, but you actually got there apparently right when
he was chasing him around the house.
When he chased him around the house.
The backyard. And that's when I yelled at him because I thought, what's he going to do to this kid, you know?
And irrespective of the fact that he was obviously guilty of having an open container, what it really boils down to, and this is telling also, because the police officer involved knew the kid. And the kid knew the police officer, and they all know each other's history. What it really boils down to is, instead of just picking him up later, which is what Jim Lacey would have done right then, instead of just saying, something that we would have done in a more genteel society in the old days, is that if you wanted to charge him with something, instead of picking him up, he actually physically ran him down and shot him with a taser over essentially a guy trying to avoid an open container charge. And that's essentially the way the whole backstory comes together. Obviously, like I say, I hate to say that this is an amusing story.
No.
Because it isn't. I mean, sometimes you think about it, you have to laugh a little bit. It says we've come to the place in this society where a cop that in a very small town knows somebody, had no violent history, the guy's simply trying to avoid getting charged with an open container, and he gets shot with a taser over it. So
I was born in this town, love this town, grew up in this town, and I was appalled at what I was seeing. And I didn't think, it didn't look to me like it was necessary, what was going on.
it doesn't seem necessary to shoot somebody with potentially a lethal device.
Absolutely
so you
not.
can charge him for having an open can of beer on the street.
And I'm 81 years old, but I guess I'm a lioness when it comes to protecting young people from something so obviously wrong.
And trivial.
And if his aunt hadn't had come out, I would have been out there.
To stay and observe what happened after
yes,
that.
but she told me it would be okay.
Well, I love you, Lola.
I love you too.
And I like to say, if there's anything amusing about this and all the incidents that I've had related to me in the last, 6 weeks since I started this, it's a very small world in a small town that I found completely by accident that you yourself have observed one of these incidents. And of course, as you understand, I've had an altercation with the officer where I've had a taser pulled out on me. So that part of it, it's kind of amusing from that standpoint.
I never even thought to mention it, which is strange. But
We're all having senior moments.
yes, and I have to say, until this has happened with you, my son, and what I observed in the backyard, I was very, very pleased with the Dresden police, because in my thoughts, they saved my husband and my life when they got us out of our burning home. But anybody would have done that. And what they're doing now is not right. It's just not right, no matter where you're living.
Well, you make a great interview, and today we're congratulating you on the fact that you've managed to get dressed all by yourself.
Yes, I've had back surgery and I look terrible, and I apologize for that.
You look wonderful, Lowell. Thanks for your time.
Yes.
I think we're going to probably lead you with a YouTube parade. You're a great interview, so.